Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to go over the red line. This will be your interface between here and the CPU. On this, you will have there's a button labeled server screen. That's where we're going to start. I'm not going to follow the outline at this point. We're just going to look at this and go through it. If you will press the service screen, the first screen you will see is where it says blower time, dwell timer 1, and dwell timer 2. The blower time is the amount of time that we send an output for the off-board blowers. If you're wanting to use our signal to run your off-board blowers for that specified amount of time, you will need to set this accordingly. Some of the off-board blowers, Superior for example, when you buy their motor starter box, it has a timer in there. You give it a 1-second pulse, and then there's a timer in there that you set to 60 seconds. And so at that rate, you would set this to 1 second and not 45, and their timer would take over. On our freestanding McNeil blowers that we're now doing, there's no timer in there, and so you would set this to run the McNeil blowers however long you wanted them to run. Dwell timer number 1 is at the back of the car. It's at the end of the first pass. Dwell timer number 2 is in the front of the car. It is at the end of the second pass. You will need to remember that for when we do recipes. Press the next button, and it takes you to the next screen. The top of that is drive off timer. The next one is entrance timer, undercar timer, and last pass boom T, which is boom top. The drive off timer is if somebody is in the car wash and the automatic is running and they drive off, leaving the treadle. We have been playing with them. They're factory defaulted at 90 seconds. I'm not sure what yours would say. They've been pressing the buttons for 3 days now. The entrance timer is the amount of time you have from the time you have put money in the auto cashier until you get onto the treadle plate. They're factory defaulted at 120 seconds. The undercar timer is how long the undercarriage spray bar will spray or run. That you can set and change that accordingly. And the last pass boom top is factory defaulted at 4 seconds. I don't use that feature, I zero it out. What that feature is on the last pass, when the gantry is going home, before onboard blowers were around, the gantry used to stop because it was spot freeing on the last pass. It would get to the front of the car, the gantry would stop, and the boom would come down for 4 seconds. We have made this an option to where the gantry no longer has to stop and the boom come down. You can zero it out. If you zero the boom down timer on the last pass, and this is still set to 4, the gantry's still going to stop and the boom's going to come down for 4 seconds. You have to zero this out if you do not want that to happen. If you want to change any of these, by pressing the enter key moves the cursor from top to bottom and so forth. Everything in the red line is in seconds. Nothing is in minutes. So if you want 30 seconds, that's 30.0. If you want 3 seconds, it's 3.0, not 0.03. That will continue forward, as well as boom down timers and every timer in this red line. Press the next key, takes you to triple shine dwell, blower delay, undercar rear wheel timer. Triple shine dwell, we're not going to spend a lot of time on. I don't use it. Blower delay is the amount of time that you can set that will be delayed from when we send the blower signal out for an off-board blower. Not for an onboard, it's for an off-board blower. And the undercar rear wheel timer is set to 4 seconds. What that is when you have undercarriage on and the car's pulling in, once the rear wheel has gone past the entrance or the undercarriage eye, or known as the entrance eye, 4 seconds later, it turns off. Whether the 20-second timer is timed out, whether they're on the treadle plate or not, 4 seconds after the rear wheel has passed, it turns off. Everything is adjustable once again by depressing the enter key, moving the cursor, changing the number. Okay, the door output signal timer is factory defaulted at 3 seconds. That's changeable if you need to make it longer or shorter, depending upon your doors and where you're at. This is the service screen. If you hit the next button, you're going to go to service screen. In your packet, about 10 pages back, you're going to find a page at the top that is labeled service screen. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each screen. This is what it should say when you're at the car wash in standby mode. Standby mode is no one is in the car wash bay, and you have power going to the gantry as well as to the pumping plant. And you're ready to wash cars, it's just no one's in the bay, and the car wash is not armed either. It's just sitting there. If you will go through this, use this sheet. When you go to do a service call, you can fix 95% of your problems with just this one sheet of paper and using this Redline controller. What we're going to do is we're going to go through each screen. The eye on the gantry, on your Redline, it says off because it's not hooked up to a gantry. What it should say is on. The eye on the top arm should be on, and the procs on the upper arm should be on. The eye on the gantry is the middle eye in the middle of the gantry that we're going to use to measure the vehicle. The eye on the top arm is the safety eye, and the procs on the upper arm. The procs on the hit next takes you to the next screen. The procs on the lower arm is supposed to be off because the boom is supposed to be up. The procs at home would be on because the unit should be at home position in standby mode. The procs, the end of track would be off because the unit is at home and not at the entrance in. The counting procs would be on or off depending on whether or not it stopped on a flag. The eye on the treadle would be off because no one would be in the bay. The emergency switch would be on. The emergency switch, that is a switch they use at C-stores. You're only going to get that if you order it. The reset switch would be off unless you were depressing the button. The entrance eye would be off unless somebody was pulling into the bay. The freeze thermostat would be on or off depending upon the temperature outside. The pre-soaked tank should say okay. The water tank should say okay, and the wax tank should say okay. Tire cleaner would be okay. Air solenoid procs would be on, and height determining eye would be on. The height determining procs would be off. It is the third procs down, or the one in the middle of the gantry. And that one is not covered by the boom when the boom is up. If you will take this when you go to do a service call, and you will go into the equipment room and you will press the service screen and you will go through here and make sure if any of these vary, that is your problem. They won't vary unless it's broke. So if the Redline is telling you something is off and this sheet's telling you it should be on, that is your problem. Go to that specified place on the gantry, and that's where you can find the problem to fix it. If you hit next again, it takes you to a screen that says for special use by factory servicemen. Are you there? Okay. Hit the delete key. Set count at front of car and back rear of car is 6. That is factory defaulted at 6. If you have, I don't suggest you get any closer than 6. What that is at the front of the car, when the eyes see themselves, it's going to go 6 counts further and stop. And the boom's going to come down and it's going to wash. As well as the rear of the car. It's going to do the same thing. I don't suggest you get any closer than 6. One, you start getting really close to damaging a vehicle. 2, you're too close for the overlapping of the spray tips. You have to be out about 18 inches before we start overlapping. And so then you can start getting into zebra striping. If you're too far away from the front or the rear of the vehicle, then your pressure is greatly diminished. And so you're not getting as good of cleaning ability either. The front of the car, if you have some bays that are severely sloped and the track is real high, a low-nose vehicle, when it's in the bay, since the track is jacked up 3 inches off the concrete, the eyes will have a tendency to shoot over the very end of the nose of the vehicle. So it thinks the car is actually shorter than it is. If you have that location, you might need to set the front car count at 8. And if you are there and you wash a low-nose vehicle, Camaro, or Corvette, or something like that, and the boom is about an inch away and you're screeching, I go in here and set it to about 8. And that's about the only time I've had to change that count. It's in that one specific location.
Now count is how many inches?
2.5 inches per count. That's all there is for the service screen. Is there any questions on the service screen? Nothing? Let's go to the test screen. Do you press the test screen button? In the test screen, you can go through, and there's 3 triangles at the top. The middle triangle under the word scroll allows you to go through the different functions found on the pumping plant and test those functions. If you toggle a function on, you have to toggle that function off. It doesn't go off by itself. If you exit and go to a different part of the program, it remains on. You have to push it to turn it off. If you wanted to test tricolor wax, you would scroll through until you got to tricolor wax. You would toggle the button on. Go out to the hand bay and see if it's working. Come back in and toggle the button off. It's pretty self-explanatory on the test screen. If you hit the next button, when you're in the test screen, it takes you to a screen that says Auto Cashier Reset. What that is if you toggle it on, we send out the inhibit signal. You can walk out to the auto cashier, open the door, and see if the last relay is illuminated. If it is, that means you have good communication and you are resetting. If you scroll here, also in this section, you get to test every light of the 10 position sign as well as the 2 position sign. As well as at the end of the lights, there's a section to test the doors. If you want to test to see if your doors are done properly, you simply toggle on or off that door, toggle it on for a couple seconds, and then toggle it off. And it will close or open that specified door. If you press next again, it's going to take you to a wheel count test. If it's a brand new install, what I usually do is set the unit on the tracks, press the middle button continuous, and allow the gantry to run for 30 to 45 minutes. Go to lunch and allow the gantry to just run up and down the track. The gantry has been put on tracks here and tested and then shipped to y'all. The metal moves during shipping for whatever reason, it flexes. If you set it on the track and you allow the unit to run up and down the track, it breaks into that specified track that you have just set. So if your track's a little off or whatever, everything will kind of align itself. And that will allow you to wash the cars better, get a better car count at the front and the rear. When you get back, what you're gonna wanna do is press return or continuous again. If you did press return, you're gonna need to go hit the test screen and go back in and hit the next button 2 times. It'll take you back to the wheel count test. What you're gonna wanna do is hit the start button. The start button tells the unit to leave home, to go to the end of the track, and then go back to the home. When you do that, it's gonna give you 2 counts. The 2 counts should be within 2 counts of each other. Usually it's gonna be 89 or 88. And you don't want to run the gantry if you're further than 2 counts difference. If you hit the next button again, it's going to give you the count front and rear of the last 10 cars that you washed. The advantage to having this portion is if you think you're having a counting problem, you can put a car in and wash the car 4 or 5 times, the same vehicle. These counts should be pretty close to each other. If they're way off the scale from each other, from one wash to another, you have a counting wheel problem. It's either dragging on the track, it's not spinning properly, or the prox is not reading every flag like it should. Hit the next button again. It takes you to the counting wheel. When the unit is running is when you would look at this. It's going to give you a present count, the front of car, the rear of car, what it's looking for to find and where it's at. Then if you hit next again, it gives you a total number of car washes. Again, that total is completely total. It includes the test and everything. From day one. But we don't actually hook a gantry up to this pumping plant and wash cars with it. We do hook the gantries up to a pumping plant that's in our test bay. We do test these units with electricity and water, but they're not hooked up to an actual gantry. It's way too time consuming to do all of that. And so we test the electrical and the water functions, and then this thing is pushed off to the side, and then the gantry is what we actually test for washing cars.
Is there a reset?
No, you can't reset it. Let's go into change settings, the bottom right-hand corner. The password is 1234, enter. You get there, the screen is owner settings, password change, set clock, and enter phone number. The phone number that they're asking you to enter is if you have auto paging. That's where you would do that. If the clocks are not set for everybody's time zones, you will need to do that in your specified time zone. And the password change is for the owners and or for us, depending upon. If you have an owner that is continuously going in there and messing with the recipes, or he is changing something and it's causing you to go out and do a service call under warranty, and this is happening often, I suggest changing the password to lock the owner out. If the problem goes away, it's definitely the owner. We have had to do this with some of the owners here in Houston. They call us and they're like, hey, I need to know the password. And it's like, no, I'm not telling you. There's nothing in there you need to know. We're doing a test and we got to run it for 2 weeks and I can't give you the password. And if it doesn't break for 2 weeks, then you know it's the owner. So then at that point, you can start charging him. Press next. Cycle switches. We're going to turn them on or off. That's pretty basic there. Hit next again. Wheel count to flip blowers early. Factory defaulted at 22. What that is when the blower's on the onboard unit, the unit comes back and the oscillator now on the McNeil system is blowing towards the windshield. Then it gets to the back of the vehicle and it does 180 degrees and is blowing this way. But what we found is the problem is when the unit comes back over the hood on cars that have bug shields are not designed for air to be blown underneath them. They break off, the brittle ones. So what we do is we turn it back around and blow the front windshield. 22 is a good count. Usually that's about the middle of the driver's side door, maybe a little bit over the hood, depending on the vehicle. That can be changed if you want it to. If you want to flip it sooner or later, just change the number. Onboard blower. Toggle this should be set here at the factory. We do them every now and then. If you ordered an onboard blower, you need to toggle that on or off, or yes or no. If it's factory defaulted to say no, you need to go in here. Remember that because your onboard blowers aren't going to work, and you're going to be scratching your head wanting to know why. And it's because it's not toggled on to work. If you hit next again, it's going to take you to another screen that says Unitech Auto Cashier. It's factory defaulted to work with a Hamilton because that used to be all there was. Now, if you use anything besides a Hamilton, you have to toggle it to yes. If it's an entry wizard, you toggle it to yes. And what that does is that reverses the way we send out the inhibit signal. Instead of sending out a 2-second inhibit signal at the end of the wash, we send out a wash in use signal the entire time the wash is being used. And that's the difference between the two auto cashiers. One auto cashier wants to know when the wash is through. One auto cashier wants to know when the wash is running and when it's not through. When it's through, you just take the signal away. Hit next again. The pager test site, this is where you would do your test for your pagers. Pretty self-explanatory, and when you press test, it's going to dial out. Continue to press the next button until you get to circulating pre-soak, high pH. If you have that option, you have to go in here and turn it on site. We don't turn it on at the factory. So you would toggle it on or off. If it was summertime and you didn't want to use that function, you would just toggle it off. If you hit next again, it takes you to circulating pre-soak, low pH. Make sure that when you are toggling one off or the other, you make sure that you got the right function, the right pre-soak. And if you hit next again, it takes you back to the very beginning. If you'll exit that screen, let's go to change prices. Change prices is price of wash cycles. That is only considered what they're worried about here in this red line. Changing these prices does not do anything to the auto cashiers. It does not do anything to the wash at all. What this is for the income monitoring for the red line. If these prices do not match the prices on your sign or your auto cashier, and you're looking at this income monitoring will not match your auto cashier income. And so you will need to change these prices accordingly. To change the wash cycles, press the triangle under change. Hit enter, moves the cursor. 1, 2, 3, and 4 are cycles. Cycle 1, cycle 2, cycle 3, cycle 4. Those are your wash recipes or your wash numbers. You got a $6, $5, $4, $2, or $3. If you hit return and then the triangle under menu, it takes you back to the very beginning. If you press the operation button, it takes you to the operation screen. The operation screen is very good for using when you're inside the equipment room and you're wanting to know what the Water Wizard is doing. It tells you the wash number, the pass number, and underneath it, it'll give you a description of what it was doing. If it was wash 1, pass 1, it would say tire cleaner and pre-soak. If you think that your recipe should be giving out a product and it's not, I would run that wash and look at the operation screen. If it doesn't come up to give that product, it's not going to. You have a recipe problem. And we'll get into more of that here in just a few minutes.